As you listen more closely to your sacred self and transcend your ego, so too will the world ego be shifted away from power, control, and money, back to the basic virtues of higher awareness, back to peace, beauty, love, purity, tolerance, patience, and compassion. This does not mean that the benefits of technology cannot be enjoyed. It means that the ego will not be the motivating force in our lives. What we truly are as a people is a force that craves peace and simplicity. We want that deeper awareness that comes with the sanity of the higher self. It is insane to continue believing that we are a collection of tribes, each with a separate identity and a special mission. It is insane to believe that anyone who does not fit into our particular tribal mentality is a potential enemy. We know that there is not a separate God for each of us, or even for each of our tribes. We know that there is a universal divine intelligence that flows through all of us, and in that sacred space within us, we are all one and the same. We know that the best within us is love, kindness, and compassion. Yet our egos, both individually and collectively, have campaigned long and hard to promote a false idea. How sane is it for people to be killing each other over disputes that ancient egos created long before we arrived? How sane is it for us to believe that some of us deserve to eat the food that God provides, and that others do not deserve it by virtue of their geographic location? How sane is it for us to pump up our youth with the philosophy of the free ride by leading them to believe that if they want something, they deserve it? How sane is it to show our children pictures of violence as entertainment and allow them to adopt the ego belief that it is human nature to hurt others as a way to defend a right to be special and separate? As our higher selves begin to triumph over ego in the daily decision-making of our lives, we will truly be making progress on the path of the sacred quest for all of humanity. You must banish all doubt about your ability to facilitate such a quest and begin to know that you are both the microcosm and the macrocosm. There is a universe within you, a unified field of all possibilities that you can reach as you become the compassionate witness. Be silent. Shut down the inner dialogue. Most important, transcend the false self that we call the ego. That is when the healing will begin to occur. The world ego is destined to be restrained as more individuals look within and consult the higher part of themselves. The doubts are vanishing, and the spiritual revolution is well underway. Moving toward an egoless world is not some far-fetched idea, any more than the disintegration of the Iron Curtain was a far-fetched idea. To those who heard such talk a few years before it happened, it did indeed seem absurd, but ideas, thoughts, and inner knowings are powerful instruments for the disintegration of the false self. One of the simplest and most powerful ways of doing this is taught by Eknath Eswaran. Writing in his book Meditation, he advises us to spend 30 minutes every morning in meditation repeating the prayer of St. Francis. In saying this prayer, we both transcend the ego and invite the sacred self to guide us through the day. I invite you to join me in this daily prayer as we share the path of the sacred quest. The prayer of St. Francis goes like this. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying to self that we are born to eternal life. If you have the same knowing about your world, dramatic changes will take place as we collectively put to use the greatest force in the universe, the force of love.
When enough of us as a people begin to think in certain kinds of ways and we reach a critical mass, then all the rest of us begin to align that way. And the same kind of changes that take place in the history of humanity in one place take place all over the planet at the same time. And as people began to think this way, that the spread is not a physical property, that it's an invisible property, that indeed we are all connected, but what we're connected with is not something that we can get a hold of. As Deepak always says, quantum physics is not only stranger than you think it is, it's stranger than you can think. Because indeed, what it does is it shatters the illusion of our separateness. So that if enough of us begin to believe that something is intolerable, and we really begin to act on that and think that way and create that, because collectively the same thing is true. The state of your life is nothing more than a reflection of your state of mind, and the state of the world is nothing more than a collective state of mind. It's a state of mind. We act collectively on what we think about.
The world you live in is an intelligent system in which every moving part is coordinated by every other moving part. There's a universal life force that supports and orchestrates everything. It all works together in perfect harmony. You are one of those moving parts. You showed up here in this body that you inhabit, precisely on time. Your body will leave here with the same precision. You're an essential piece of this complex system. Here you are in this intelligent system that has no beginnings and no ends, in which all of the galaxies move in harmony with each other. You must have shown up here for a reason. Khalil Gibran said, "When you are born, your work is placed in your heart." Take a moment right now and point to yourself. Your finger is very likely pointing right at your heart, not at your brain, but at your heart. This is who you are. The constant beating of your heart in and out and in, is a symbol of your infinite connection to the always present heartbeat of God, or the universal intelligence. Your left brain calculates, figures things out, analyzes, and comes up with the most logical choices for you. It thinks. Your right brain represents your intuitive side. This is the part of you that goes beyond reason and analysis. It's the part of you that feels things, that's sensitive to love, that's emotional about what's important to you. Your right brain allows you to tear up as you hold your babies or bask in the beauty of a glorious day. Your left brain can analyze it, while your right brain lets you feel it. Pick a situation and ask yourself if what you know or what you feel is most important to you. Generally, what you'll take care of first depends on the situation and circumstances you're in. Your intellect can be figuring out exactly how you're supposed to act in a relationship when things are collapsing or when they're rapturous. And then there are times when what you feel will supersede what you know. If you are feeling fearful, scared, lonely, or on the other hand thrilled, loving, and ecstatic, these will be the dominant forces you'll act upon. These are the times when your right brain is right. Your right brain will always lead you passionately to your purpose. Listening to your right brain. There's an intuitive, invisible presence that's always with you. I picture this presence as a nagging little creature who sits on your right shoulder and reminds you when you've lost your sense of purpose. Listen to your invisible companion. Express the music that you hear and ignore what everyone else around you thinks you should be doing. As Thoreau put it, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music he hears, however measured or far away. Be willing to accept that others may even see you as having betrayed them, but you haven't betrayed your music, your purpose. Listen to your music, and do what you know you have to do to feel whole, to feel complete, and to feel as if you're fulfilling your destiny. You'll never be at peace if you don't get that music out and let it play. Let the world know why you're here, and do it with passion. Being passionate means taking risks. You may indeed find yourself living a comfortable life when you don't follow your instincts. You're aware of that nagging companion saying to you, "This may look right, but does it feel right? Are you doing what you came here to do?" For many people, the answer is, "How do I know what my heroic mission is?" You'll find your passion in what inspires you the most. And what does the word inspire mean? It derives from the words in spirit. When you're inspired, you never have to ask about your purpose. You're living it. For one of my children, it's about riding horses and being at the stables. She's in heaven when on horseback, or even cleaning out a stall filled with horse manure. Another daughter is only inspired when she's singing, writing music, or performing. She's felt that way since she was 2. For another, it's her artwork and design that makes her feel purposeful. For yet another, it's designing websites and creating computer programs for others. For me, it's writing and speaking and creating products to help people become self-reliant. This has always been my passion, even as a young boy. When I go before an audience and I sit down to meditate, I repeat the mantra, "How may I serve? How may I serve? How may I serve?" How can I get my ego out of this presentation, out of this program, out of what it is that I am doing, and my needs to have rewards and to have applause and to have people tell me how wonderful I am? How can I get all of that out? If you're a dentist, you can give a flower to every patient. You can call them in the evening and ask how they're doing, as my dentist always does. You can make your waiting room a place where people look forward to coming by putting in programs like this for people to listen to while they're being drilled on. It doesn't make any difference. If you're a cab driver, you can make your cab a place of service. You can do a little bit extra. And the irony is, when you turn your life over to being a statesman and ultimately to being a spiritual being, this attitude allows this free-flowing, unconditional, loving energy that is the divine universe, that is God, to enter into your life. And it just keeps going. You're just keeping the channels open, folks. That's all you're doing. You're just keeping it open. And you're aware of every little cue that comes along that blocks that channel. The minute that it's there, it's an angry thought, it's a judgmental thought, it's a stressful thought. The minute that it shows up, you replace it with an attitude of service, gratitude, generosity, and it leaves. The part of you that knows, the part of you that is infinite, as the poet suggests, the part of you that is every place, is also in all that you would like to see show up in your life. And if you keep a generous, grateful, serving attitude, you'll never block it. Thank you.
Human beings are multidimensional. We don't get that. We think we're just one-dimensional. Maybe two we'll get in. We don't see that there's 18, 20, 50, hundreds of dimensions that are all part of this transitional process called humanity. And that when you get this inside of you, that death is no longer anything to be terrified of. It's just you understand, you know, it isn't a belief, it isn't a faith, it isn't a religious thing. It's an understanding that you can't kill thought. And form never dies. It is always just in transition. And if you just ask yourself the question, am I a body with a soul, or am I a soul with a body? And if you know that you're a soul with a body, if you know that you aren't this body, and that you've been in many bodies already. You've been in this little body, and then in this 12-year-old body, and this 18-year-old body. You've been in all these bodies. When there's no form left to any of them, you take on a whole new approach to this terrifying thing called aging or dying. I had to address the Florida Council on the Aging last week. I was the keynote speaker. And I got up there and I said, and there were all of these people who work with aging people and all of these older people and so on. And I got up and my opening line was, "You've asked me to be the keynote speaker on a subject that I don't believe in. I don't believe in aging. You can't age thought. You can't age spirit. You can't age divinity. You can't age feeling. You can only age form." And I know that's not just me. And that's what this whole thing is about. That's really what we're talking about. Understanding that who you are, because you can't touch, feel, grab, and do all that stuff you can do with that pile of bones and gristle and veins and things like that. And because you can't get a hold of all of that, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, any more than the wind doesn't exist because you can't get a handful of it. No one has ever seen the wind. You can't see wind. You can't hold wind. You can't smell wind. You can't touch wind. You can only see the results of wind. That's all. You know that wind exists, but nobody's ever seen wind. How can you do that? So it exists independent of whether you can touch it or grab it or not. And as you get into this awakening process, this highest level that frees you from all of the stuff that immobilizes most people, all of the anguish, all the depression, all of the having to get ahead, all of the accumulation anxieties, all the type A behavior and the hurry sickness that we suffer from, that stuff becomes something in the past that is just thought, it's just there. And you'll never ever be knocked around by it again. So thought is an endless energy that goes on and on. And if you know that that's who you are, this ability to think. And for the skeptics, I would suggest to you that what you do is you think about everything that's ever happened to you up until this moment and understand that all of it, up until right now, in this moment that you are alive, is in the realm of thought. You can't touch any of it. You can't have any of it. And yet it's very real for you. You can get very emotional about it. You can have experiences through that thought, but you can't ever have it. You can't ever touch it in the form sense. So that your whole experience of your past up until this very second is all in thought and nothing more, right? And yet it's very real. And then I would say to you that to think about everything that's going to happen to you from this second on, and to understand that that's also nothing more than pure thought. You can't have any of that. You can't touch tomorrow. You can't get a hold of your goals. You can't have those and dissect them and treasure them. You can't take tomorrow's BMW and drive it. That's all just thought. And yet you can also have the experience within your form, within yourself, through thought. So your whole past and your whole future are a thought. So that only leaves you with now. Then what you do is you look at now, and you look at all the things that are important to you, that you want for yourself. And you start with your children and your wife or your husband and your co-workers and your parents and all of these people, and you understand that the only way you can ever experience them in the moment is through thought, through your mind. You can't do it any other way. You can't get behind their eyeballs and be them. That's the limitation of form. So you can only do that through thought. And then you take all of the stuff that you want to accumulate, and you begin to see that that's only thought too. It's only thought. You can't be a diamond. You can't be a new house. You can't even have it. You can't even own it. It is only in your mind that you do something with it. And you can experience it, but you can't have it. Now you get to this place where you understand there are no limits on me, because I can think anything I want. Now you're looking at new rules. New rules. Here are the rules. There are no such thing as cause and effect. Now, we live by cause and effect in form. You do this, and it causes this, and physical form is altered by this and that. But in thought, you don't have to have a cause and effect. In other words, if you're doing something in thought, and you want to change the thought to something else, or if you're right now in Chicago, but you want to be in Afghanistan, you just go there. You can go there, and you don't have to get on a train, and you don't have to fly. You don't have to do any of that. In thought, you don't have to have cause and effect. That place of no limits is how you start looking at everyone and everything in the universe. And you begin to look at all the stuff that we get really hung up with owning, and you start saying to yourself, if it's in my life, it's fine, and if it's not, that's okay too. And you look at your relationships, and you find out that almost everything you fight about, you're fighting about stuff that doesn't even exist, isn't even real for you. What's real is just how you think and what you fill yourself with. And if your thoughts are harmony and ease and serenity and love, and that's all you have to give away, then that's what you start giving away. You can be anything, you can do anything, you can go anywhere. I think of it like an actor on a stage. You sort of see your form going through these motions. Like we produce a series of tapes, all right? So that's one of the motions that it goes through. In order to do that, we got to fly to Chicago. In order to do that, you got to drive through rainstorms. And you just sort of watch your form go through all of these things. But there's another part of you, the real divine part of you, the real you, that sort of just stands back like an actor on a stage and says, these are just emotions that I'm going through, but that isn't really me. I'm much more divine and much greater than all of that. I'm much bigger and grander than all of that. And you start seeing the perfection behind everything that you're doing. And you never worry again about your form wearing out or about dying or any of those things. They become meaningless.
And that's who you are. That which never changes. And if you ask any of the spiritual masters who've ever walked among us, any teacher that will come your way, they will teach you that reality is the part of you that is eternal. And when you live there, you abide in an absence of fear. And you begin to know that life itself is a sublime experience. And there are no accidents in it at all. That this is an intelligent system that we are all a part of. And that intelligence, whatever you want to call it, flows through each and every one of us. And the same intelligence that moves a star across the sky moves a thought across your mind. The same intelligence allows the seedlings to sprout. And we'll take a little seedling and have treeness in it, just as a little drop of human protoplasm has you-ness in it. And it has a future pull. And the whole physical domain is handled in that drop of human protoplasm. When you will show up and when you will leave. It's all in there. The thing that makes you a member of something called higher awareness is that you, unlike a tulip bulb, which has its future pull built into the bulb, you get to decide. You get to decide on the pictures. And you get to determine what your life truly is, not what this garage where you park your soul is all about. And to understand this, go to the poets. We were doing a tour, a backpack thing with my wife and two other couples this summer on Haleakala in Maui, this dormant volcano. And you go down in there and you hike for 3 days. It's a wonderful experience. It's like the closest you can get to being on another planet, I think. It's very silent, and the terrain looks like God has just sort of reached down and placed each object in there. It's a very peaceful, beautiful place. And it's all volcanic dust. And when we got one day in, and we all sat down to do a group meditation, I picked up a handful of this volcanic dust, and I said, would you like to... I used to teach this poetry, and I've written a lot of it myself. And I said, would you like to hear what Emily Dickinson had to say about this in a poem that she wrote in 1914 called The Single Hound? And we all sat around and we meditated, and I held this dust in my hand. And I said, listen to Emily Dickinson, and listen to this, and think about you as the noticer and as that which is being noticed, what you've been watching as you send your body back to nowhere. And what part of you is real and what part isn't. She said, this quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion where bird and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased like these. Think of this room filled with all of these people here tonight, and think 1,000 years into the future, and listen to her words again. This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. You see, if your primary identification is with this thing called your body, then you are destined to a life of fear. If you know that who you are in a state of heightened awareness is not this raw material, it's as if this organizing intelligence we'll call God has taken all of this raw material and organized it into various levels of awareness. Here are some rocks, here are some plants, here are some animals, here are human beings, all made up of the same stuff. It's not the raw material that separates us from all other life. It's something called awareness. And this heightened awareness that we have a capacity, most of us live our lives at the awareness level of survival. The awareness level of daily awareness in this room, where the animals live, just sort of taking care of their offspring and providing for themselves and planning a little bit for the future and putting a little bit away. And the idea of a higher level of awareness doesn't even enter our consciousness. We're satisfied to survive, except for the fringe dwellers who say, there is a deeper, richer experience of life. I know it. And just because you who are in my life are not on my path, not only are they not on your path, they're not even on an entrance ramp to your path. And they probably won't be. And that's divine too. That's perfect. That's here to teach you to be kind, not to be right.
We grow up believing in so many limitations that after a while our lives actually manifest those limitations. We hear ourselves saying things that we accept as truth, when in fact they are misbeliefs that have turned into our truths. Here are 5 of those myths or misbeliefs that permeate our culture. 1. I can't help the way I am. I've always been this way. If you find yourself believing that you must always be the way you've always been, you are arguing against growth. You must shed the illusion that you cannot help the way you are. You must create a knowing within you that you have the power to create whatever kind of person you want to become in all aspects of your humanity. 2. It's my nature. I inherited who I am, and it can't be changed. To enter the realm of real magic, you will have to suspend such thoughts and become a spiritual being first, a being who has no limitations in the inner domain where boundaries are non-existent. 3. My personality is controlled by my chemistry and metabolism. This is a lie we hear over and over again, and it is repeated in some of the most prestigious circles, making it even more difficult to overcome. While scientists may in fact have a point about body chemistry, what they too often fail to address is what kind of control we have over our own body. Our body chemistry is always being affected by how we choose to think. I want you to take a look at the enormous power that you have in your mind for containing those enzymes or retraining them to work for you rather than against you. Here's misbelief number 4. My family is responsible for my personality. These kinds of pronouncements are the very sort of inner thoughts that will keep you from ever allowing miraculous changes to take place in your personality. You must know within that you not only have a choice today, but you have always had a choice concerning how you react to the influences of your family. The choice is always yours. Know that your family and your role within your family influence you today to the extent that you believe that they do. You must become the producer, director, and actor in the unfolding story of your life. 5. I can't escape my culture and times. If you believe that the culture determines who you are and what kind of a person you will turn out to be, then that will be your reality. On the other hand, everyone who has ever made a difference in the world has been an innovator. An innovator looks within and allows their conscience and commitment to a purpose decide who they will become. If you're going to follow your bliss and make a difference in the world, you will soon learn that you cannot follow the herd. Once again, it boils down to personal responsibility and a willingness to consult your own spiritual awareness, that higher invisible self that flows through you. As you think, so shall you be. These are the big 5 misbeliefs that make up the big lie that was thrust upon you from your earliest moments of consciousness. You must begin a program to overcome these illusions. As you now know, this entire program of creating miracles revolves around one single premise, that you become in the physical world that which you create in your invisible world. Here are the 6 keys to making yourself into the person that you choose for the purpose of fulfilling your heroic mission here. 1 is your personality. Create a fantasy in your mind and imagine exactly how you would like to be. Would you like to be more assertive, more loving and gentle, less anxious and nervous? For now, just know that all of these inner imaginings can be translated into physical behavior, for that is precisely what you've been doing all along anyway. Secondly, your talent. Just for a moment, visualize the optimal talent that you would like to have. Your choice to excel in any given area will be based upon your own personal interests. Your talent, like everything else about you, is a function of the invisible force that flows through your body. It is not in your hands, your genes, or any part of your physical apparatus. It is in the force that flows through all of your being. When you begin to know rather than doubt your talent, you will discover the necessary physical abilities to carry out your purpose. Third is your intelligence. How smart would you like to be? Would it take a miracle for you to be smarter intellectually than you already are? You are as capable as you need to be to fulfill your purpose. Your intelligence is infinite. Almost 20 years ago, I redefined intelligence in your erroneous zones. A truer barometer of intelligence is an effective, happy life lived each day and each present moment of every day. You are a genius. You can improve your arithmetic and reading skills. You can learn anything that you put your mind to. You are a spiritual being first and foremost, and you cannot put a number on that. Fourth, your habits and customs. Would you like to be able to change some of the things that you find yourself doing repeatedly, but which do not serve you any longer? Use your magical powers of inner persuasion to challenge everything about yourself. Your personality is made up of the hundreds of habitual ways that you conduct the daily physical affairs of your life. You can change around your daily humdrum habits and get yourself fully involved in life, regardless of your income level or circumstances. Circumstances do not make a man. They reveal him, as James Allen reminded us in As a Man Thinketh. Learning to think in non-habitual ways is the essence of overcoming personality traits that no longer serve you. Fifthly, your aging. Imagine for yourself the ultimate miracle, a slowing down, or even an elimination of the aging process. The way out of this trap, the real magic that is available to you, is located, as is everything else, in your invisible self, your mind. You can absolutely refuse to let an old person into your body. If you can work your mind in a genuinely magical sense, you can strongly affect the aging process of the cells composed of indestructible DNA. It is in your mind where that invisible intelligence works its magic that you must examine your attitudes towards aging. Do you think old thoughts? You can begin to rethink how you feel about having your individual cells deteriorate. And if you use your mind in a new way to develop a new knowing within, perhaps you will be able to affect that process that you have come to think of as inescapable. Your emotional health is another area. Your emotions are physical manifestations of your thoughts. The joy you experience is located in your physical body, and the chemicals that are present when you experience elation can be identified and quantified. You manufacture those chemicals in your own quantum pharmacy that begins with your mind. When you begin to heal the inner you and consult that inner voice constantly, you literally begin to alter your immune system. Emotions show up in your body as physical manifestations of your thoughts. Keep this in mind as we head toward the path of real magic. The sage emulates the natural philanthropy of the Tao, and all of his needs are fulfilled in the process. The ego is a demanding force that's never satisfied. It constantly requires that we seek more money, more power, more acquisitions, more glory, more prestige to provide the fuel that it thinks it must have. But living a Tao-centered life rather than an ego-centered one removes us from the rat race, as it offers inner peace and satisfying fulfillment. This is what I believe the wisdom of this verse of the Tao Te Ching is saying for the 21st century. First, make an attempt to reverse ego's hold on you by practicing the Tao's teaching to serve the needs of others, and all your own needs will be fulfilled. Generously thinking of and serving others will lead to matching your behaviors with the perpetual rhythm of the Tao. Then its power will flow freely, leading to a fulfilling life. Ego wants the opposite, however, as it tells you to think of yourself first and get yours before someone else beats you to it. The main problem with listening to ego is that you're always caught in the trap of striving and never arriving. Thus you can never feel complete. As you reach out in thoughts and behaviors, you activate loving energy, which is synonymous with giving. I see the sacred, invisible source of all in its eternal state of giving and asking nothing in return. I vow to be this too in my thoughts and in my behaviors. When you're tempted to focus on your personal successes and defeats, shift your attention in that very moment to a less fortunate individual. You'll feel connected to life as well as more satisfied than when you're dwelling on your own circumstances. Imagine what it would be like if you dismissed ego's hold on you, serving others, and watching how all that you give returns to you tenfold. The poet Hafiz expresses this attitude perfectly. Quote, "Everyone is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him?" Unquote. And secondly, stop the chase and be a witness. The more you pursue desires, the more they'll elude you. Try letting life come to you and begin to notice the clues that what you crave is on its way. You're in a constant state of receiving because of the ceaseless generosity of the eternal Tao. The air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, the sunshine that warms you, the nutrients that keep your body alive, and even the thoughts that fill your mind are all gifts from the eternal Tao. Stay appreciative of all that you receive, knowing that it flows from an all-providing source. Stop the chase and become a witness. Soothe your demanding habits by refusing to continue running after more. By letting go, you let God. And even more significantly, you become more like God and less like the ego, with its lifetime practice of edging God out, E-G-O. Extend your perspective beyond the sensory level. Your inner conviction knows that a rose is more than a flower, as it offers a pleasant fragrance and velvety petals. Use that knowing to perceive the creative invisible force that brings an intricate blooming miracle from nowhere to now here. Experience the essence of the Creator who allowed this blossoming masterpiece to emerge from a tiny seed. Note that the seed arrived from what we can only refer to as the world of formless nothingness or spirit. See that spirit animating the colors, the scents, and textures, and look at all of life from a transcendent perspective. You'll be less inclined to join the chase and more inclined to live from the inner conviction that your true essence is not of this world. Discontinue pressuring yourself to perpetually accumulate more. Let others be consumed with the chase if they choose to, while you learn to relax. Rather than focusing outward, turn inward. Cultivate awe and appreciation as inner touchstones rather than an outer determination for more adoration and accumulation. When you see a beautiful sight, or hear an enchanting sound, or taste a mouth-watering delicacy, allow yourself to think of the miracle within these sensory pleasures. Be like the master who prefers what is within to what is without. Allow things to come and go without any urgency to become attached to this ephemeral world of comings and goings. Do the Tao now. Be on the lookout for ego demands for an entire day. Decide to diffuse as many of them as you can comfortably, perhaps by assigning them an intensity grade. Living beyond ego situations that are easy to accomplish gets a low number, while those requests that are difficult to quell get a higher number. For example, let's say that your mate drives right on by, or you watch him or her take a different route than you ordinarily do. Silently witness the degree of discomfort with your decision not to say anything. Did ego let you know its preference? Or if you have a conversational opportunity to display your specialized knowledge or describe a situation where you were the recipient of honor or success, note how uncomfortable your decision to remain quiet felt. Again, did ego let you know its preference? As Lao Tzu says in this verse, quote, "Through selfless action, fulfillment is attained. By holding back ego's demands, even for a few moments, you'll feel more and more fulfilled." Unquote. In the Tao, it says that a victory in war is to be celebrated by mourning, because it still gives evidence that we have not found our divine nature. If you love those who love you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak love those who love them. And if you're good to those who are good to you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak do that. Love your enemies. Be good to them. Share with them without expecting anything in return. Then your reward will be rich, and you will be sons of the Most High. He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be compassionate like your Father. How much of that do we practice on our planet? Divine love is a love that we have inside of us because it's the only thing we have to give away. That's all we can give away. Again, Patanjali, when you are steadfast, this is who Jesus was. This is who Rumi was. This is who Shams of Tabriz was. This is who Muhammad was. This is who Buddha was. When you are steadfast, which means there's no ego, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's who St. Francis was. I've been to Assisi. Some of you were there with me. How many? Who was there? Look, so many of you were there with us last year, just a year ago, a little over a year ago. Do you remember the lecture in Assisi? When I stood there and St. Francis just entered my body, and literally I just lost it. I couldn't speak for 7-8 minutes. It was overwhelming, the love. And everyone in the room just stood up and just held their hands out. You can reach this level of consciousness. There's a great Indian poet. His name was Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. In 1927, he wrote a collection of poetry called the Gitanjali. This is what he said about the ego. I went out alone on my way to my tryst. But who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter.
He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame. But I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. That's the ego. That's the part of us that we have to transcend. That's where we have to go within and recognize who we truly are. And who we are is divine love. When Jesus was asked, who is God? He said, God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him. It's just love. That's all Rumi is about. It's about love. It's about love for the beloved, love for the divine, love for that place within us that is our excitement. It is our God. It's what God is. Whatever excites you is the part of you that is saying, this is my Dharma, this is what I'm here for. And you know what it's always about? It's always about serving. The miser who loves his gold gets no love from the gold. There's no love in gold. The reason the miser is so exquisitely happy with his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for it. That's what he feels. When you feel so good about your Mercedes, or you feel so good about this ship, or you feel so good about your great paintings, as I read to you at the beginning of today, the Chinese versus the Byzantines. When you feel so great about these great accomplishments and all that you have, and all that you own, and all that you've defeated, and all the wins that you've had, it's nothing to do with any of that stuff external to you. It's the outpouring of love that you are giving to it. And you can't have love in your life, and you can't give it away unless that's what you have inside.
Verse 40 of the Tao says, it's all about returning. It's all about returning. Returning to what? Returning to the place from which you originated. The first 9 months of your life, you lived inside of your mother's womb in water. And during those whole 9 months, nobody could get in there and mess around with you. Nobody could get in there and get you to worry about anything. You didn't have sonograms that you'd look at and say, my God, I don't have a nose yet. What the hell's going on? I sure hope I get a nose. And you got into nose therapy and you worry about it. Oh, what if it doesn't happen? You don't do that. And all of a sudden, perfectly, it all unfolds in exactly the way it's going to unfold, independent of your opinion about it. You're not doing anything. Nothing is left undone. You're being done. You're being completed. And you were totally, completely at peace with it. You were surrendered to it. You allowed it. It wasn't a struggle. It wasn't... And then you popped out of there. And then you said, thank you, God. Thank you, Tao. Thank you, Source. We'll take over from here. And that was the biggest mistake. All of a sudden, you took over. And you edged God out. E-G-O. You edged God out. And you took on an ego, didn't you? And what is an ego? It's just an idea. Just an idea about who you are. Instead of being a piece of God, a piece of the Source, you decided, and those around you decided, that you were something different. And if you studied quantum physics and you took the tiny little particle that began you and you tried to find out where it came from and reduced it down to its tiniest subatomic properties, ultimately you would discover what Lao Tzu knew, that it's the spirit that gives life, that you didn't come from a particle, that particles do not create particles, particles do not come from particles. Originally, all particles come from an energy, a field of energy that has no beginnings and no ends and no boundaries. And that's who you are. And returning back to that and letting go of the idea that who you are is what you have and who you are is who you control. I don't think there's any more all-pervasive theme in the Tao Te Ching than the idea of being a non-interferer. Do you, Stephen? I mean, isn't it? It's about not interfering, isn't it? It's about letting go. It's about allowing. It's about detaching. And I watch, and I've become much more of an observer, even on airplanes. I was in London 5 days ago. And I don't know if you've flown in and out of Heathrow lately, but things have really changed. You know, we couldn't take anything on the plane. The terrorists, whoever they are selling fear, and we respond with more fear. Every time you use force, you create a counterforce, and then another counterforce, and before you know, and the Tao teaches us all. I mean, one of the great lessons in the Tao is that any country that has its primary resources and its energy placed on building weapons is not of the Tao. And those countries that have their consciousness located in the Tao put their energy into tractors and building homes and growing food, not building weapons. I saw a movie not too long ago with Nicolas Cage about warlords or something, the Lords of War, I think it was something like that. One of those alarming things about how much energy we are in the world creating, energy to destroy ourselves, that we have literally created from our consciousness enough weaponry on this planet to eliminate all life within just a few moments. It's all there. It's all there for us. We've allowed ourselves to move so far away from the great teachings of the great spiritual masters, and we believe that we're a Christian nation or that we're a spiritual nation when we find ourselves having moved away from these simple principles and then getting upset with other people because we can have these kind of weapons but they can't, and we don't look hard enough at ourselves and all the ways that we have deflected ourselves from the greatest teachings of all of the great spiritual masters. That those who understand the way understand that we show up here from a invisible source, and our whole objective in being here is to return to it. It's a return trip. And constantly I call this the state of God realization. That it's within each and every one of us, if we decide that we're going to make this return trip and live a God-realized life, this idea of a God or a source or a spirit or an intelligence that is not something that is external to you, but that in fact is you, is the source of all of us. In the Tao they call this the world of the 10,000 things. And the 10,000 things is just the ultimate number to represent everything that is in the material world. So that everything that originates in the world of source, in the world of non-being, all being comes from that place.
And when we look at what it means to live an inspired life, it's nothing more, in my estimation, it's nothing more than finding a way for you to be in harmony with the spiritual essence from which you originated.
not just in your actions, not just in your feelings, and not just in your behaviors of attending church or being nice once in a while, in every single thought that you have. And I'd like to suggest to you that inspiration is not something that comes and goes. It's not something that you have one moment and then the next moment it disappears. And this is a whole new look at inspiration. To me, inspiration is living in spirit at all times and catching ourselves when we find ourselves disconnected from the spirit from which all of us emanated. It's really thinking like God. It's being more in touch with that place of origination. It doesn't come and go. When you live an inspired life, you begin to feel as if you're on purpose. I guarantee you that at the end of this show, you will not have to ask the question, what is my purpose, and how do I find it, and where is it, and how come I can't get it, and why does somebody else have it, and I don't seem to get it? It always seems to elude me. These will no longer be the issues that face you about being inspired. It's really about living day in and day out from this divine perspective of watching every single thought that we have and catching ourselves when we have a thought that is inconsistent with that divine source from which we all came. So that if you have a thought that includes you and your family, but excludes someone else and their family, no matter where they are in the universe, no matter where they are, no matter what they look like, no matter what side of the river they were born on, no matter what their cultural background might be, if you have a thought that includes some and excludes others at any time, you're not in spirit. You have left spirit and moved into something else, taking on a view of yourself as someone who is separated from your source. So that you watch yourself and you catch yourself, and a big part of this program will be about watching those thoughts. Many of you know that I had a very powerful and important teacher in my life when I was a young doctoral student. He was perhaps the most significant teacher in the professions of my life. He wrote a very important book back in the 1950s called Modern Man in Search of a Soul. His name was Carl Jung, and Carl Jung had others in his life who were students of his, and one of those was Abraham Maslow. And Dr. Maslow's work on self-actualization and higher consciousness and teaching people that if you want to help another human being, you always put your attention on what it is that they can do to improve rather than on what is wrong. So you don't talk about what is missing, what is wrong, what ought to be, what used to be, unless you want more of that to continue flowing into your life. You put your intention and your attention on what it is that you want to shift and change. And he had an observation. Maslow's observation was this. He said, what is necessary? What is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself. So becoming inspired is really about changing your awareness of yourself. And what does this mean? It means shifting the belief systems that you might have, the thoughts that you've had over and over and over again that say, I am limited. I don't have the talent. I don't have the background. I don't have the luck that I need in order to be able to attract what I want into my life. Things have never worked out for me before. You change your awareness of yourself and your own body and what you believe about it. Like, how could you have a body that comes from a divine source that creates from well-being and have it be anything other than beautiful? Have it be anything other than divine? Have it be anything other than perfect? A perfect creation of God, of source, of spirit, is what it is that you carry around with you. And if you have any other thoughts about it, then you have to really work at shifting them, because it's an insult to that from which you came. When you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the very wisdom that created you. And inspiration is about having that. It is about recognizing yourself as a genius, recognizing yourself as a person of unlimited talent and the capacity to be able to do anything. And there is absolutely nothing that I can't create if I can conceive of it in my mind and know that if I don't have the talent, that whatever talent is necessary, I can manifest it and have it show up and attract it into my life. Whatever financing is necessary, I have the ability to be able to connect myself to that. It's a knowing, it's a powerful knowing.